Welcome to Smash Metafiction. This week, we unearth pieces of our favorite old stories and stitch them together into a brand new abomination that we like to call Collaboratory. I'm your host, Claire Mulcairn. Joining me this week are Meganbob.
Hi.
Dan Mulcairn.
Movies.
And special guest, Magdalen Rose.
Hello, hello.
So this is our first time having a guest on Collaboratory. I'm very excited about this. Magdalen is a really, really awesome YouTuber, is video essayist sort of person. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. How would you describe yourself and the things that you do?
It is difficult to describe because I'm all over the place. I can't stick to one thing for very long, so it's generally about media and things that I like, but it's also just about like whatever shit I want to talk about, like whatever's on my mind. I like to have conversations with people as if we're sitting together, just like talking.
The advantage of that as someone who watches your show is that everything you do is interesting because you only do a video on something that you're interested on. So there aren't always like an overriding theme all the time, but it's just really interesting stuff about media and culture and stuff like that. For people who have not heard an episode of Collaboratory before, the way that it works is that we are all going to take elements from our favorite stories. There are 4 main dishes, which are characters that we like, and there are 4 side dishes in the forms of a setting, a goal, a MacGuffin, and a genre. We're going to bring them all together. It's a big old weird potluck, and we are going to try to build some sort of story out of these pieces after we have boiled them all down into basic archetypes stripped of all of the stuff from the original story they were taken from. So, you know, Han Solo, for instance, might be Han Solo in all of his specificity, but if you pull him out, you might make him a lovable scoundrel. That might be the archetype that he inspires with you. Or maybe he's just a creepy dude who doesn't know how to respect women's boundaries, and that's like the archetype that he means to you. So
yeah, we definitely need more of those in our media, don't we?
Yes, indeed.
So, Claire, damn.
Without further ado, unless there's anything else, I think it is time for us to open those Tupperwares and unwrap the foil and see what everybody brought. Mags, since you are our guest, do you want to go first and tell us which character you brought this week?
Okay, I brought Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek.
Very nice.
He's a big favorite of mine. He is the captain of the USS Enterprise in Star Trek The Next Generation. He's like a diplomatic leader. He's like a leader who appreciates and has the goal of like diplomacy and peace and justice. And what I really like about his character and Star Trek in general is like a vision of the future that is not shitty. I really like that because I'm so sick of dystopian future like narratives and stories. Amen. Yeah, I really like the idea of like a confident guy who's not weird and has that toxic like I'm so tough, you know, like stuff. But he's like so secure in himself and like has a real drive for like peace and diplomacy.
Well, very cool. That is an awesome character. Who's feeling like they want to go next to tell us about what character they brought?
I'll go next. Mine is very strange, though.
Sure.
I brought the Ghost of Christmas Future from Christmas Carol.
Oh my god. Is this because Kit isn't here?
Yeah, we need a nonverbal character. The Ghost of Christmas Future is from A Christmas Carol, which I feel like is a story that most everyone knows. To summarize, a rich, miserly asshole gets visited by a bunch of ghosts on Christmas Eve, and they show him things that convince him to turn his life around and be nice to people. He's visited by several spirits, the final of which is the Ghost of Christmas Future. All the spirits have like a different kind of look and personality to them. Christmas Future is basically the Grim Reaper, and is just there to sort of like silently guide Scrooge through this nightmarish hellscape that shows what sort of future he's in for if he continues to be a jerk. I feel like there's actually a few different archetypes that we could pull from Christmas Future. Like we could go something very obvious and just make it like a ghost or a demon or some other kind of like menacing supernatural entity. But I also think that we could take it a bit more broadly and make him into something that's a bit more of like an impassive harbinger of something deadly that's about to happen. Like someone who's bearing a warning of some type.
Meganbob, you want to go next?
Between these two things, I brought Martin Kreef from Cabin Pressure.
I have not seen
Ooh,
that.
I've never heard of that.
It is a BBC radio comedy that Benedict Cumberbatch did. And he was doing it before Sherlock happened and then continued doing it whenever he got really big. But it's comedy, and it's one of the few times you get to hear him really do comedy. And Martin Creef is the character that he plays, and he is the captain of MJN Airlines. It is an airline with a single plane. It is an air dot, as they say. And he gave up everything. He wanted to be the captain so badly. He said, I will do it for no money. And so he's a try-hard, but a try-hard who is so technically proficient and yet really does not get a lot of respect, struggles to be taken seriously because he's so self-sabotaging in a lot of ways and kind of so uptight because he is self-sabotaging. He's a very interesting character. It is a comedy. I want to say it's also sad, but it's a comedy in the way that British things are funny.
Cool. I don't know what the heck this is all going to turn into. So the character that I decided to bring this week was Catra from the new version of She-Ra. Catra for me is the archetype of the bad guy who might not be all bad. There's the little spark of good in them. It's a little bit sort of like Kylo Ren or Prince Zuko, where you're not sure if they're all bad or if there's like some good in there and maybe you can get through to them. In the case of Catra specifically, she's, an evil cat lady who used to be friends with the main character Adora when they were both on the bad side, which is the Horde. And then Adora leaves and joins the good guys. Catra stays with the bad guys, but Adora is still trying to get through to her. And so we could have her be it used to be the friend of a better character, and then she took a wrong path and went down a dark road somewhere. That is how it works in that, but doesn't necessarily need to be. The thing that's important to me is it's the bad person who might have some good in them and people are trying to get through to them. Okay, so let's go back around. Mags, what did you bring this week for your side dish?
I brought the genre of sci-fi or science fantasy. I'm a big into science fantasy in general.
Do you want to make it specifically that? You can go as specific with these things as you want. So
I do like science fantasy, specifically like Sword and Planet, sort of really cornball science fantasy is really great.
So next up, Dan, what did you bring for your side dish?
This will actually, I think, fit very nicely with science fantasy because my side dish was the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin that I have brought is Mjolnir from Marvel Comics and the MCU. Mjolnir is the hammer of Thor. Anyone who uses it gets Thor's powers. So super strength, invulnerability, lets you fly, lets you summon lightning. You can travel through dimensions and stuff. It's a really super powerful weapon. The catch is that you can only use it if you are worthy of using it. What I want to bring in as an archetype is this item of tremendous power, but has a morality catch to it. You need to fulfill some sort of moral obligation or something in order to actually use it.
Very cool. Meganbob, what did you bring?
I brought the goal, and I brought the goal from the film Lost in Paris. The main goal of it is that this lady from Canada finds out that her aunt in Paris is missing, and so she packs up all of her stuff and heads off to Paris, having never been there and speaking some French, to find her missing relative. So the goal is to find a missing person in an unfamiliar place.
Well, I just want to say this is all making far too much sense right now. So I'm happy to say,
Save us, Claire.
I have brought a setting that is going to derail all of this right now, which I'm very happy about.
All right.
I have brought the setting from the movie Clerks.
Oh my God.
I love it.
So specifically, what I want this to be, what this means to me is it is the idea of, and the setting doesn't have to be, with all of these things, it doesn't have to be necessarily where the entire story takes place. It just needs to be a pivotal, important location for at least a good chunk of the movie, not all of it necessarily. So for me, the setting of Clerks is a soul-crushing, terrible customer service day job. That's a dead-end job. It could be like the gas station, or video store. In the second movie, they're at the fast food restaurant. But this could also be something in a slightly different setting. If any of you have seen the movie Sorry to Bother You, that one takes place in a call center. That's a very similar, soul-crushing environment. And that story also has some elements of, alternate reality sci-fi stuff going on in it. So I don't think this necessarily means that it's perfectly normal. You could have, a soul-crushing customer service job while working on the Starship Enterprise. That would be fine with me. It's just, it has to be that terrible 9-to-5 job.
I don't think we have a movie here.
We almost did, and then I destroyed it.
Totally
I came in at the last minute. So the next step we have to do is the log line. What this means is we're going to kind of brainstorm for a while and figure out what we want this story to be. And our eventual goal is to be able to work this down into a 1-sentence high concept pitch. The book Save the Cat, which is the screenwriting book that we are using, advocates writing around a thing that could be pitched in 1 sentence or something that makes a good movie poster. It's a high concept movie. Where do we want to get started in terms of figuring out how all of this is going to fit together?
I think it makes sense to get where is this soul-crushing place within this science fantasy world.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think those are the 2 hardest pieces to fit together. So let's do that first.
That sounds almost like serfdom, right? Like,
yeah.
Because in customer service jobs, I've always felt like I'm just like in fucking feudal, England here.
Right. So there's 2 ways I think we could go with this. I think one could be that there is a soul-crushing customer service job within this setting that someone is working at least at the beginning of the story, or maybe they get captured in like a prison and forced. It's like Spartacus, but instead of being sent to the gladiatorial pits, you're sent to like flip burgers or whatever.
Oh no! Send me to the pits.
Yes, we could go that route, or alternatively, we could have a story that starts off on like actual normal Earth, because we have this person who has to go look for a missing relative. They could have to go look for their missing relative in space. They could like learn that they have a relative who is a space alien or like a Flash Gordon type who would go have space adventures, and they have to like go try to find them, but they're a normal person from Earth. Or alternatively, or it could all just take place up there. Which of these are you feeling a stronger pull towards, guys?
I'm really feeling the idea of like a normal person getting sucked into some wild space fantasy. That sounds like really fun.
To me, the most obvious way of doing that is with Mjolnir. This person finds a magical artifact that they can then use to like leave their world and go into this other place. And then they get powers so they can like actually make a difference and like pursue this goal that they're after in the process.
It would open with, the last spaceman hero guy, using his space ring to fight the bad guys is like, oh, no, I'm dying. What do I do? I've been captured. Space ring, travel to Earth to my cousin. He is the only one who can save me. And then like he goes, and then the cousin gets thrown. They're like, what do I do? I have to go save.
Yeah, I think that's a way to do it. The Mjolnir equivalent was like some sort of weapon or device or something that the main character's like relative used, and maybe it only works for people of that person's bloodline. Our main character is like the previous hero's like only living child or only living cousin or what have you, but they're like the only person in the universe that can use Mjolnir. The other thing that I think kind of needs to be adjusted for is we have the Ghost of Christmas Future, who's a harbinger of something terrible. And then we also have Catra, who's a potentially reformable bad guy. And so I feel like those 2 things are probably connected somehow. Maybe Catra is like working for whatever big bad Christmas Future is a harbinger for, or is a warning of.
Or Catra's the big bad, and Christmas Future is a harbinger of her, because she's going to destroy the universe.
That's true. I mean, if we want to pare down our characters, that's a good way of doing it.
What if like the harbinger of like doom like shows up at this guy's like gas station market where he's working behind the cash register or something, and he's like, hey, your cousin is a space hero and they're missing and you're the only one who can do anything about it. So here's Mjolnir, because you got to go on a space adventure now.
Is our hero Martin Creve or Jean-Luc Picard? And then what do we do with the other one?
It's Creve, just so you know, because it's a less cool name than Creve. That's
my
key.
bad. My brain auto-corrected it into a cool name. So
yeah, no.
I think Martin is the better main character. I think we could use Picard maybe as like the leader of a group of people that all use Mjolnirs, or like his new boss or something, like some sort of authority figure.
It's sometimes nice to have, if this person's like more of a lone space hero, space knight type person, we could have a separate like space empire that's led by some sort of general or leader person who like doesn't see the doom coming and is like just sending ships at it and like trying to fight it straight. But then the space like, no, you have to listen to me, Captain Picard. We have to do it this other way, like that kind of thing, But
right, yeah. No, it could totally work, because I wouldn't think Picard would like the idea of like a lone renegade who's like going off. He'd just be like, no, we have to follow like the prime directive and like go by the books. You rapscallion, what are you doing? And
You with your Mjolnir.
We have rules in place when the universe is threatened, and we're going to follow
Right.
them.
So his like fatal flaw would be more of like bureaucracy, right?
Just to throw out an alternative, we could also make Picard the relative that Martin is looking for, like the one who wielded Mjolnir before and then gave it to his living relative, who is Martin.
I do like the idea of like, is his name Martin Kreef?
Yep, that's
okay,
him.
cool. I like the idea of him like being sort of the fish out of water who gets thrown into this situation and then has to sort of live up to the legacy of Picard.
Oh, he'll do such a bad job.
Yeah, and he'll just completely shit the bed about it.
The only thing that I worry about is I want to make sure that this person has like other people on roughly the same side so he can be talking to people as he's going on this adventure. Like,
Right.
if you're incapacitated the entire time and you're a horrible doom that's not going to show up until the third act, we don't have any of our other characters in this movie. You know what I mean? So
Right.
Mag suggested that Christmas Future is like the person who brings Mjolnir to Martin. And so like
he could be like the Obi-Wan Kenobi or what?
yeah, or like a cosmic butler of some kind, you know? He's like
Space Jeeves.
he's like a servant attached to the hammer. And he's like, I have brought this hammer to you. It is yours now. And therefore I am at your disposal. And so he can be like
Right.
a little bit of a repository of like knowledge about stuff. He can also be like someone for Martin to play off of, you know, like a more kind of stoic and knowledgeable person versus like Martin's stupid and spazzy self.
All right, well, in that case, what is the doom that's coming to destroy the galaxy? What do we want it to be?
Some big bad.
Yeah, none of us brought a big bad, really.
I see Catra as being a better like a Darth Vader than an Emperor.
I kind of like the idea of her being someone who was like fighting a great evil, defeated it, and then like became that great evil. You know?
So she pulled the old Arthas.
Hey, there's this evil empire sitting around that no one's doing anything with. I think I'm
Right.
gonna like take over as the new empress, you know?
So yeah, we could even have like that Catra and the previous wielder of Mjolnir are together at the beginning and they like defeat a big bad, and then Catra like stabs him in the back and like stabs the good guy in the back and like takes the throne or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
or like hauls him away to whatever, some prison, and then his relative have to save him or whatever. So
I like the idea that like Catra and Picard were like these two equals, you know, like they're the same class of character. And so she knows enough about him and how his connection to Mjolnir works that she knows how to like cut him off from it. When she gets the upper hand, she gets into the position where she can retake the Empire. She like cuts him off from his source of power, throws him in the jail cell, and then Christmas Future takes Mjolnir to give it to the next person in line.
I guess this is fine. What is he doing?
This is fine.
We talked about the Spartacus thing. I actually think we might be able to include this other thing as like a fun bit. What if for like kind of the first half of the second act, he'd be more like fighting stuff in a normal way, and then midway through gets like captured by the bad guys, and then for a while is like a prisoner. Instead of being the gladiator pits, though, we make it a thing where whatever job he was working on Earth for a period of time while he's in space, he's forced into like the space version of it. And like, even though for the first time in space, he's like, oh, I'm away on this great adventure. But like after the midpoint of the story, he like spends a little chunk of the movie like, no.
Yes.
And like that's the fate worse than death.
And I think that that's also where he could run into Picard finally.
Right.
Is that like
Right.
Picard has also been forced to work at the IT desk of the evil empire, you know?
Right,
Oh
okay.
my god.
What job did he work? Part of me thinks fast food because I want to see Captain Picard having to wear a dumb little hat like you wear when you're at
You know
In-N-Out,
what?
but I don't know if that's...
Yeah, I think it's a universally shitty job.
Yeah, I'm down for some fast food.
All right, so Logline would be an ordinary man trapped in a soulless, dead-end, burger-flipping job, gets the chance to become a big, epic space hero and save his uncle, question mark, from the clutches of an evil space tyrant.
Sure.
Good? All right,
Nice.
cool. So now we are going to run through something called the beat sheet. This is going to be the majority of the rest of the episode. In Save the Cat, there's something like 15 or so steps. I've whittled it down to 12 for the purposes of making this podcast not take forever. And they are as follows. Opening image, theme stated, catalyst, break into act 2, B story, fun and games, midpoint, bad guys close in, all is lost, break into act 3, finale, and closing image. So the first one that we're doing is the opening image. At this point in time, we're going to be introduced to our main character, and we're going to get to see who they are and what they want. They should be in a relatively stable situation, but there should be something about their life that needs fixing, and generally they should need to learn some sort of deeper lesson that's like holding them back. What is it that we want to have for our opening image?
If we had him in like some sort of mild, irritating conflict, like say he's behind the counter and there is just some old person just complaining complaining and yelling and just be like, why isn't this? You kind of see that he's like, he can't stand up for himself, perhaps, or like that the flaw in his personality comes out, like, and you're like, oh, that's the problem.
Right.
And then and he's sort of trapped and it's miserable.
I like that. Yeah. Meganbob, what do you think is a good flaw for this character?
One of the things that I think would work really well for this is that his first defense is to go to buy the book, whatever that is, which is often what holds him back. So I like the idea of him getting out, if they're saying, how come you're not serving these Egg McMuffins? This is before the Egg McMuffin changeover, that saved us all. That his response wouldn't be to argue about it. His response would be to get out like the policies.
Yeah.
And show them the policies and go, well, here's where it is. And they'd be like, ah.
Is the thing that he has to learn to like stand up for himself and say no? Or is it to be like have more empathy and like sneak her an Egg McMuffin on the side?
I think the lesson that he's going to learn over the course of this adventure is like learning to think creatively, learning to think for himself. Like, and it could be the sort of thing where like Christmas Future, as this entity attached to Mjolnir, doubles down on that a bit. And like keeps telling him the policies and the procedures. And we get to a point in the story at some point where the solution is for Martin to stop doing things by the book, and to just sort of like cut loose. And so like that's sort of what we're building towards. So yeah, if we establish him as the sort of person where like there's a really obvious solution to his problem, but it requires him doing something that the book does not cover. And therefore he's just completely unwilling to even consider it.
I've had this thing at some jobs where it's like, you can't walk away from behind the cash register and leave the cash register unattended to like go do something elsewhere in the store. And it could be like there's, for instance, an old lady in a walker who's on sitting in a table at the other side of the restaurant, and he's the only one around. Everybody else is like in the bathroom or somewhere else. And he like brings her food up to the counter and sets it down. And then she's like, could you bring that over to me? And he's just like sitting there and he's like, I can't leave and then she like has to like get, okay, it's fine, and starts like slowly walking up to him in a walker. And then like she gets like all the way there and then like starts walking back with it. And then like one of his coworkers comes out of the bathroom, is like, dude, just walk the burger over to there. And she's like,
that's so Martin. He doesn't want to be awful, but he makes choices that kind of make him awful.
Sure.
Do we want to have a cut to this point to what's going on in space? Like what would be happening to set up what's going on with the other characters at all?
What is it? It's like Catra and Picard like charge their way through a bunch of minions into the throne room of the evil empire. They take out the Emperor.
Well, Picard isn't like more really an action hero. I think because he would have the security, he'd send Worf down there. But so I think it would make a lot more sense if like he came down there for like a diplomatic meeting of like a peace treaty, and then it's like Catra like betrays him.
No, it'd be interesting if like she goes down there to talk, and they're like on their way to like negotiating some sort of peace, and then she like pulls out a sword and like stabs him or something like that. Like, we got him, that kind of thing. Or she jumps to violence too soon when he was just about to turn the guy or something like that.
Right.
So
then Catra turns on Picard, cuts him off from Mjolnir, which then goes like flying off.
So what is Mjolnir going to be? Is it a sword? Is it a ring? Is it a hammer?
What's a cool thing that Picard would have that would be like his power or whatever?
A cup of Earl Grey tea.
Yeah.
This is Flash Gordon Picard though.
It might be better if it's like some sort of ring or a glove of some kind.
I want a space ring.
Okay.
We can do a space ring. That's very science fantasy, space ring.
All right, cool. Theme stated is the next step. This is where at some point some character will state either what the theme of the movie is as a way of like stating their worldview to someone, or a character will state the exact opposite of what the theme of the movie is actually going to end up being. And it like plants a seed in the audience's mind about what the movie's going to be about. And then by the end of the movie, we are going to have it be proven right or wrong one way or another what this person said. So do we want this to be something that happens in this prologue scene, or do you want it to be something that happens at like back in the burger flipping side of things?
We already talked about the scene where Martin is unable to leave the cash register because he follows the book. And I feel like, that thing you were saying where like the person comes out of the bathroom and is like, dude, just like help her with her burger. And he's like, no, like the book says I can't do this. Like, I feel like that's our theme stated. You can use common sense every now and then. You don't have to like rely on the rules all the time.
All right, great. We did this step already and didn't even realize it. Look at us. Before we get too far into this, the other thing that you can do in Act 1 is Martin going to save a cat? Because save the cat refers to a scene that the writer of the book realized happens early in a lot of good movies, where the main character, metaphorically or literally, saves the life of a cat as a way of letting you know that they're a good character and you should like them as your protagonist. It happens in Alien, literally. It happens in several movies, literally. But you can have it be in some other way where it's a scene that endears them to the audience of them like, oh, this is a good character. I like this character. Yay, let's root for them. So we had Martin not hand a burger to an old lady in a walker, which is pretty much the opposite of saving a cat. So what is he going to do later that lets us know that he is good? It could be like, at this same job, or it could be later when he's at home or in some other aspect of his life that we see later on. What do you guys think we want for him?
He can be really generous, like really self-sacrificing sometimes in stupid ways. So I could see him not having enough money to eat anything that he was particularly interested in and like buying cat food for a cat.
Ooh, there you go.
Oh, yeah. How about this? Like, goes to the store with food for himself and food for cat, only has money for one of them, and puts back the food for himself, right?
Yeah, there you go.
That's a Martin thing.
I've had Purina for dinner before, and I'll have Purina for dinner again.
He's like, no, I have a pet. The rules are that the pet must eat.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Next up, we have the catalyst. This is the thing that has arrived that is going to slowly bring them and beckon them into the world of Act 2 where the story is actually going to begin. I wonder what this could be.
So I guess he's like at home with his cat when, this ring comes like crashing in through his window and Christmas Future like emerges out of it and says, Martin Creef, you have been chosen.
What does the Ghost of Christmas Future look like in this if he's a space fantasy ghost guardian in protection of a magic ring? Like, what is that?
Space fantasy ghost.
I mean, I'm thinking like shrouds of some kind and like robes,
Well, do you want to say that has like some really avant-garde makeup?
What actor is playing him? Yeah, this
Is
would
it
be
Jeff
like
Goldblum? No.
I would say if this was the 80s, this would be like David Bowie. But,
I was just going to say that. Yeah, exactly. It would be David Bowie.
Okay, so the
my
ghost of
God.
David Bowie is
The ghost
playing
of
him.
David Bowie.
Yes.
Brilliant. I love it. Ship it. It's ready.
All right, so in this, we're going to get high quality scans of him to recreate David Bowie in 3D, and it's in somewhat poor taste, and the movie gets a lot of complaints when it comes out because not everybody's down with.
The thing you don't understand is we're not actually creating a new movie. We are rediscovering a forgotten classic from the 80s.
Right.
So-
Exactly.
Yeah,
All right. That
okay.
sounds
Yeah.
good.
All right.
Yeah,
fine.
so keep your future casting
saved.
decisions in mind for this.
So all of our casting has to be done with 80s actors. So
Yeah,
let's
I
get
mean,
to
it'll work
know.
for Patrick Stewart,
Yeah,
That's
there
true.
you
That's
go.
true. Yeah. He's looked exactly the same for 30 years. So.
Yes.
yeah.
So he comes in, he tells him, like, hey, you got to go on this journey with me. There's usually some sort of, like, I don't want to, hero resists the call thing. So why does he decide to go with him? What does he present to him as, like, the reason why? And, what makes him do it?
Well, I think, if we're saying that the goal is to find this lost family member, Christmas Future at first just tells him, like, you've been chosen by this ring to go, like, fight this evil empire. This is your responsibility. You have to do it. Martin balks at that. But then at some point, Future drops the fact that this was his uncle that, like, bequeathed this ring to him. Martin's like, my uncle disappeared X number of years ago. The family doesn't know what happened to him. We've all kind of given up searching. And you're saying that, like, he's out there somewhere?
Do we want to say that his uncle actually did go missing? Or is this the sort of thing where his uncle still lived on Earth and, like, had a normal life, and then when the ring would flash, he would, like, disappear from family dinner and then go have space adventures and then be back in time for tea? Like,
I think the mystery of like a missing family member who's like would be more science fantasy of like they went off into the wild blue yonder, but in a modern world or a 1980s world, he would probably go missing and then everybody would like assume like, yeah, he went to Vegas and just like fucked off from everybody. What a jerk. And it always seemed really out of character for him to like abandon everything. And then it was always like such a mystery of like, why did he do that?
it occurs to me, do we want to say that this is his uncle, or that we like threw that out randomly? It could be his dad too. Do we want to do that? Because then it's a little bit more of like, why weren't you there for me, Dad? I had to save the universe. You did care about saving me. Like, do we want to do that or no? Is that too?
It should certainly be a father figure, I think. Like an Uncle Ben would work, but it needs to be like, I think, the person who raised him.
So now we have the break into Act 2. This is where the main character makes a choice, crosses a threshold, and leaves their normal world and enters the topsy-turvy world of Act 2. This is probably fairly self-explanatory. Does anyone have any ideas for what this looks like when he does it? Like, what is the scene and what happens when he takes his first steps?
I think there has to be a transformation sequence, obviously.
Is it like a magical girl transformation?
Yeah, it's 100% a magical girl transformation.
Yes.
And given that this is now a 1980s sci-fi movie with David Bowie as our spirit guide, I feel like he needs to end up looking like Ziggy Stardust after he transforms. Just
I'm
like
into it. I'm totally
jumpsuit,
into it.
makeup, giant weird colored hair.
Yeah.
That's what his form looks like when he transforms. Which then means that in this opening scene, that's what we get to make Patrick Stewart look like, which I'm very happy about.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yes.
You want to see Patrick Stewart in the jumpsuit, like the very tight jumpsuit with prominent bulge.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
Who doesn't want to see that?
Exactly, yeah.
I'm picturing, holds up the ring, starts to glow, and hear, da 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 da. You're a space crusader.
Also, I think we now have the name of the movie.
Oh, dude,
Space
we
Crusader.
might. We just might. So he's going to take off into space, flying like a Green Lantern, one hand forward, going through crazy rainbow space stuff. So what's going to be like the first step when he goes off into space? Where does he end up at the beginning?
Where would Space Ghost David Bowie take him? My first thought is a bar, but that seems weird.
You'd think he would want to take him to like train to use his abilities, but at the same time, we don't want him just to be on like a rock. We want him to be like, I want him to be like in a space city where he gets to see a bunch of weird aliens and stuff. You know what I mean?
It could be the sort of thing where he gets taken to maybe like a planet that the Empire had hit. He gets to see people that are being enslaved, or just like devastation from when like the Empire did orbital bombardment of the place. But we get to like see the aftermath of what the Empire does. And you could have the sort of thing where like before they actually get to train, Martin runs into like some of the Empire's like stormtroopers or something, and he has to like fight them off as Christmas Future is like screaming in his ear like how to use his powers. He's having to like learn what the ring can do very much in the heat of the moment as like all these mooks are coming at him.
When he first gets on the planet, he's like, the ring can disguise you into like normal clothes. So he like does it, and it gives him like a ridiculous like sci-fi outfit that's like a bunch of rainbow colors and has like a big old weird hat and stuff. Like he's like, this is normal. It's like he's like, yeah, on this planet that's just normal clothes. Like
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and he's like, oh good, I'm glad I'm not wearing the jumpsuit anymore. This is so much more dignified. Or whatever, So
My instinct is when he first arrives, he could arrive at somewhere that's actually fairly like cool and like really exciting. And he's like, wow, space is great. This is so wondrous and incredible. And then as he progresses through that area, he starts to see the devastation. They like travel to a place where so it's like, oh no, this is serious.
Or if it's like a really great prosperous planet, it seems all cool, but then he realizes that like it doesn't become obvious at first, but it's like really totalitarian. And it's like that sort of thing. This happens in a lot of Star Treks or like episodes of Sliders. This place is such a paradise. Everything is so great. And then you learn the terrible thing. You're like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Real quick though, because we're kind of moving into the later stuff already. The next step along the way is, as we're going on this adventure, we are going to have a B story, which is a tonally different, lower stakes counterpoint to the A story. And it kind of bounced back and forth. It's oftentimes a friendship or a romantic relationship, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. So this could involve our main character. This could involve one of the other ones. What do you think we want to be like having as a secondary story that we're cutting back and forth between, either with this character or somewhere else?
I mean, it could be an exploration of Christmas Future as a character. When they're not flying around in space or fighting off mooks, Martin says to him, so like, what's your story? Like, what, are you just like a ring ghost or whatever? And you could maybe learn that this is like the earliest person in the bloodline to have worn the ring first.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so it's like his great-great-great-grandfather.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Whoa.
The development of like this cross-generational relationship between these two characters.
So far, we haven't given any indication that like Catra is actually has a heart of gold, is actually good. So it might be cool to have some scenes where she is like answering to like an emperor or somebody, and while she's going along with it, like they do something that's really serious, and she's like, are we sure we really need to do this? Do we really need to like take over this town? Is that really necessary? They're not even strategically important, and they're just like, no, because evil. And you see that like maybe close up of her, she's just like, I don't know. So, and then she goes on.
I think the question would be then whether or not she is the one on the throne as the big bad, because we were leading towards that. But,
okay.
so I'm trying to think of, Because that is a good way to show her having some, like, humanity. And because I did originally envision her as the Darth Vader, but having another emperor there behind her.
If we make her the new empress, she's inheriting this, like, military apparatus, like all these soldiers and commanders and stuff. And they could sort of say to her, okay, well, like, you're in charge now. These are like the invasions that we are planning, the genocides that we have lined up. And she gets kind of like momentarily overwhelmed by the scope of this thing. You know, she had been seeing it as like a power grab for herself. And we sort of see the moment where she realizes like everything that she's inherited. And she gets the sense that she can't now tell these bloodthirsty people that they can't have their carnage, you know? And she's like, I guess I kind of have to go along with this.
I think an example of this can be in ancient Rome. There was a lot of times where the emperor was one source of power and the Senate was another and the military was a third. And if the people didn't like the empire enough and like the emperor pissed off the military too much, the military would just kill the emperor and put in a new emperor. It could be the sort of thing she inherits this, but then there's like some really bloodthirsty general who, and she's like had this vision that she could reform the bad empire from this position, but like, there's too much machinery already in place. And like, if they get tired of her, they're like, she kind of realizes somebody's like, you're just a figurehead.
Yeah. I really like the idea of her as an empress who she goes in as a power grab. She's like proving herself, like, I can be the fucking empress. Yeah. And then she realizes the gravity of what's happening. And she gets whisked away.
Yeah. It could also be the sort of thing where like she is put in the position where she can grab power at the beginning of the movie because she like makes a secret alliance with the military, because the military, like the people in charge of the military, like secretly hate and are plotting against the old emperor. Catra gets with them. They put her in a position where she can assassinate the emperor and then become the new empress. And so like when she starts maybe pushing back or questioning some of their more violent and destructive decisions, they're just like, oh man, I remember when the old emperor used to tell us what we couldn't do, you know? It's that sort of thing. So they like dangle this thread over her and she realizes really that she's like not in as much control as she thought she would be.
Right.
I know
like
this
that a
is
lot.
not a named character, but I'm getting some real Nicolas Cage vibes from this.
From the general?
And
this is 1980s Nicolas Cage. So this is like Moonstruck Vampire's Kiss sort of Nicolas Cage. So
What color is Nicolas Cage General's hair?
I'm always on the side of like, I don't trust people who are really, really blonde naturally. Like if somebody's bleached their hair, it's totally understandable. But if you're like that sort of creepy Aryan light, just like, I always get like, you're just Draco Malfoying it up, you know?
Man,
all right.
Natural blonde Nicolas Cage is maybe the most disturbing image I've had all day.
Exactly.
With those like dark eyebrows.
Yeah.
Right.
This is
like a badger.
He would be straight out of Dune. This is some like Paul Atreides shit. This is like,
See?
All right.
Space fantasy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Can this movie be by David Lynch? Can we make this happen?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, great. And now we have the next section is fun and games. This is the part of the movie that is the movie. Whatever the high concept is, this is where we explore it and have fun with it in a lot of different ways. If there was a trailer made for this movie, this is where most of the footage would come from. There are ongoing problems, but in some ways they are the sort of more surface level fake problems. We haven't really fully dealt with the real serious stuff yet. Fun and games. What do we want for this section? What are some scenes that are coming to people's minds?
I like the idea of like a training montage where he has to learn how to use his powers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've also set up with that scene with Catra that the Empire has like some sort of a destructive invasion plan. That was the thing that like Catra was balking at when Nicolas Cage brought it up to her. So I feel like it's at this point that like we see that invasion beginning to happen, and like in his first shining moment as Super Space Cop, Martin flies in, starts like fighting off spaceships, fights off all the ground troops, and like saves the planet from being hit by the Empire.
He also writes a manual for his powers.
Oh yeah, no, I like the idea that during the training montage, Christmas Future is like laying out the individual like mandates of his order. There's like a 43-part oath that you have to adhere to. And Martin is like eating that shit up. He's like, yes, this is perfect. I will memorize every one of these and follow them perfectly.
He's taking notes, right?
Yeah.
On like
He has a binder. He has more than one binder.
That's great.
He keeps asking, is there a printer here? Are there printers on this planet?
I'm thinking a lot about like what the bad guy's evil plan is going to be and like a little bit more about the mythology of this thing. And I had a thought of a thing that could make Catra get like really upset about what they're doing. Their power could come from like your home star. Like he has the one for like the sun, you know, and there's like a few of these knights that are chosen from a few different like stars in the universe. And they're like these special people. And the ultimate plan could be like to destroy all of these stars that are the sources of their powers. And then it would like destroy the inhabited worlds that are around them. And it would end up being like a small portion of the whole galaxy, but it would stamp out these people who are like the biggest threat to the continued existence of the Empire. And Catra is like having some second thoughts about destroying entire worlds. What do we think about that as like the specific thing?
And we could
like
even
that.
say then that there's only two left, right? There's like Catra's and then there's Martin's. Like there's the sun and then whatever like homeworld Catra's from. Because like they've destroyed all the other suns that the other rings came from.
Oh, so sad.
So they'd have to destroy Earth. And like maybe she could convince them to spare her own homeworld because she's on their side and has the ring and whatever, you know, but they're going to have to destroy Earth.
This is the thing I want to preserve about him as part of his try-hard failiness. He's never done great with dating on Earth and is like, but I'm kind of cool now, maybe. And like, it just blows up so badly.
Have you seen my jumpsuit bulge?
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, why would you ask that? And he's like, why did I say that? And then Ghost David Bowie's just standing there like, oh, we have so far to go.
Like, you know, training's done. He hits the club, just makes a giant ass of himself.
Right. He gets like overconfident.
Yeah.
Not just overconfident, but thinks I did all the right things, though. It all made sense.
Right.
Right, yeah.
I listed the rules that you need to follow if you're going to be a suave seduction artist.
Yeah.
All right, great. I love that. Oftentimes there's there's like a sort of false victory thing before things come crashing down. We're going to say he probably destroyed some fleet that was coming to like invade Earth, right? That was the thing that we said, or what?
Do we want to say that he destroyed the fleet that was coming to invade Earth? I think it might...
sorry. Some other smaller world, maybe?
Yeah, I was thinking like,
okay.
he stops the Emperor's invasion plans, and that like signals to Catra that the ring is still an active threat. Like she was under the impression that Picard had no more living relatives. But these reports of this space cop flying in and like destroying the Emperor's fleet, she's like, oh, his son must still be alive. The only way we can stop him now is to take the fleet to Earth and destroy that planet.
Cool. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That raises the stakes quite a bit.
Yeah. So now we're at the midpoint. This is the this changes everything moment of the story. So there's some sort of second threat, second problem that they have to deal with in addition to the stuff that they were having to deal with before. If they have a big character flaw that they have to overcome, then oftentimes it is the second problem that gets introduced that makes them face it directly. For instance, in Black Panther, the problem that he has to fight in the first half of the movie is Claw in like the fun and games section. And then once the midpoint hits, he is halfway through the movie is where T'Challa meets Killmonger for the first time, because Killmonger is the one who forces him to confront the flaw within himself of the whole like isolationist stuff and blah, where Claw wasn't really doing that. Yeah, we're shifting into like the more serious, real section of the movie now. So what's going to happen with our midpoint and what's our new problem that he has?
My first instinct would be like, oh, do we need to like kill the ring wraith, the ring ghost person off in some way, or get him like where he no longer has any guidance. He no longer has the rules anymore, and he has to do it. He can't, like, there is no rule book anymore because he has no.
You're such a writer. No, I would have been like, no, we have to keep everyone alive forever.
Kill your darlings.
Absolutely.
I know, you're so good at it.
Something like this could be cool. Yeah, we could actually time this also with when he gets captured and forced onto the fast food thing and like gets the ring taken away at that point.
I think that the midpoint could just be when they realize that the invasion fleet has now turned to Earth. That ups the stakes, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, coming up are the beats, all is lost and bad guys close in, where stuff starts getting dark. And it can be in those moments where we start to see that his downfall is the fact that he can't think creatively, and he always follows the rules. And because Catra knows the same rules that he does, because Catra knows this oath that he memorized, she's able to play him, right? She's able to like think ahead, set up situations where he's going to follow a predictable route. And so she's able to like capture him or otherwise beat him.
So yeah, in this case, I think the midpoint then is that the first time he meets Catra, because he hasn't fought her directly yet. And she's the one, because she's aware of this, who can exacerbate this flaw in him, who can make it become visible, because he has to start facing it directly. So the midpoint is he fights her for the first time, and it does not go well.
Yeah, because she has the same powers that he does. she has a lot more experience, and she realizes
And
quickly...
she plays dirty,
Yeah, she plays dirty and realizes very quickly that he will not. Like, he will not step outside the bounds of the rules.
Is that how he ends up working at the fast food place? Is like he loses to her and then like the ring is taken and then...
Yeah. So the next two steps, we're kind of doing all of this at once, but it's bad guys close in, because the midpoint is like the thing is introduced. Bad guys close in is they're dealing with the two problems at the same time, and it's kind of harder, and they're not doing as well as they were in the first half of the movie. And then you have all is lost, which is they finally collapse and lose everything, and then that's the end of the second act. Midpoint, meet Catcher for the first time. Bad guys close in, fight Catcher for the first time, and lose against her. And then all is lost is gets captured, gets thrown into the space fast food place alongside Picard, who's now wearing a tiny little paper hat on his head. And he has to like flip burgers and stuff like that, and serve them to like aliens. So
what's the name of space fast food restaurant?
Oh my God. I'm thinking of something like Cosmo something.
Yeah.
Or like Astro.
Okay,
like
so there's
Astroburger or something.
A website that my and Dan's brother showed us a while ago. It's called Punchline Design, and it can create portmanteaus.
Yes.
So I'm going to see what it comes up with if I do burger and space. Hold on a
All
sec.
right.
Awesome.
So they're not great.
Okay.
It's got Men Universe,
That
Sub
sounds
Weightless,
awful.
Sub-weightless.
Drive Throom. I think it's like Vroom or something. It's like trying to do like a space thing. I don't know. And Barbecue Universe. But
Barbecue Universe. I kind of am into that.
I'm into
All right.
Barbecue Universe. I will say now that he's working at Barbecue Universe, I think we need to have some repetition of the stuff that we saw him doing at the very beginning when he was working at a fast food place on Earth, including like the customer service hell stuff. So like if he had one specific like archetype of a customer with a very specific and unreasonable complaint, he deals with that exact same archetype and complaint here. It's just like, a giant shrimp who's yelling at him.
Right.
Yeah.
Assholes are universal.
Yeah.
We want like a succession of, at the very beginning of the movie, there were like 3 really bad customers he dealt with in a row before we got to the old lady who he didn't help. And then he does those same 3 customers again, but aliens this time.
Exactly.
So, that's very good.
It.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Does he help an old lady? No, he still doesn't help an old lady yet because he hasn't learned the lesson. Is that when we know he's learned?
See, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
What happens is there's an old lady who needs to be helped, and he's about to go help her. And then from the back of the store, his dad, Picard, who's working with him, says, "Hey, you're not allowed to leave the register unless you get someone to replace you. There's someone who has to be at the register at all time." And then you're like, "Oh, okay." And then he stops and doesn't do it.
Oh, my heart.
But it's rubbing him the wrong way. You can see that it's starting to come in his mind, like the twinkle. He's like, "Is this right that I'm doing this?" So.
It's like a generational flaw because,
that was his dad's downfall too, right? So.
Right.
So he meets up with his dad. They're both working at Barbecue Universe. I think his dad has kind of like become resigned to his fate a little bit because he's like, we lost the ring. You were my last hope and you couldn't win either. There's not much that we can do. This is showing that like neither of them have thought outside the box on this. Like they're still thinking with their usual rule set. And I think that like this thing with the old lady suddenly cues Martin into realizing that he doesn't have to like lean on the rules all the time. And he like eventually defies Picard and defies the rules of Barbecue Universe and helps this old lady.
I love these low stakes moments of like, I've learned the lesson.
Yes.
I gave a lady her burger.
He's like, "No, Dad. If someone needs the burger, you can just go give them the burger."
Yep,
so great.
perfect.
All right, that's very good.
What is Picard's reaction to this moment?
Well, I think that's also one of those moments where there's often a time in a movie when there's like a father-son or mother-daughter relationship where the child teaches the parent something.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, "You're right. I forgot this in my old adult life because I've become a hollow husk of a person."
Yeah.
We definitely need him to do an Earl Grey spit take though.
There you go. Now we're at break into Act 3. This is where there's going to be a crossing of a final threshold into a new arena of conflict where the climax is going to take place. I'm guessing this is going to be leading to some sort of like resistance or like covert op or something. I don't know. What do you guys think?
From the Barbecue Universe.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is what I want. It's just an uprising with utensils.
Is it like the uprising in Thor Ragnarok with Korg, where it's all of the people who work at Barbecue Universe?
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
just like, we're not going to take this anymore.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they form a union.
They unionize, yes.
The general hears something from one of his people who's like, "My lord, there's some problem on, planet whatever." It's like, and he's like, "The people have grown restless." He's like, "What's happened? Are they revolting? Have they turned violent?" He's like, "No, they're unionizing."
This is the greatest movie.
So General Nicolas Cage sends in all of his forces to like put them down.
All of them at once.
Yeah.
Send in the Space Pinkertons.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Are they like, I don't know, getting their spatulas and the like lids of buckets as shields and stuff? Are they're like gearing up to fight the
Yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
has a mop.
It's the sort of thing where like all the people that work at Barbecue Universe are made up of the different species that the Empire has conquered. And so it's the sort of thing where like each of them has like a weird special alien talent. It's like, all right, you can fly, and your blood is made of napalm, and you have like, like an ear-splitting cry that you can do. So, and they like put together this plan where they
That's
like
really good, I
utilize
like that.
everyone's talents to break out and like get back to wherever they're holding Martin's ring so that he can get it back. And it could even be the sort of thing where like they're initially planning on giving it back to Picard when they get the ring back. But he's like, as Mags was saying, it's like, no, you're a much better critical thinker than I ever was. Like, you should be the one to use this ring.
I also think there is an alien who works at the Barbecue Universe who was really impressed by the fact that Martin sort of rebelled. And so he finally gets like some sort of positive encounter with somebody, like where they're like, "Oh, you're not a hopeless asshole." Like, "Oh, okay. I could have a milkshake with you," or the space equivalent thereof.
It's like the first time he's actually gotten some sort of validation in his life.
Yeah.
We've broken into Act 3. Now we're at the finale. This is the second to last step in the movie. So this is the big showdown between the two sides. Things are going to be settled one way or another. And generally at this point, if the main character has learned their lesson by now, they succeed. And if they have not learned their lesson, they fail. And it ends up being a very sad movie. So what sort of shape is this finale going to take place? Where is it? Who is in it? All that stuff.
Picard should be leading the union of Barbecue Universe employees as part of the final like ground assault against the Empire. Martin is flying around, taking out ships, and eventually Katra flies out. It's a little like Return of the Jedi, where there's these like multi-level battles happening.
This is a good Star Wars movie ending where you have the multiple arenas of conflict at the same time. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Katra maybe used like one trick against him before, like when he was being a real stickler for the rules, and she tries it again, and this time he like reverses it on her, or he like pulls out some dirty tricks that she wasn't expecting. He's now learned to like think outside the box and not follow the rules all the time.
So he's gonna kick her butt. Is he gonna like convince her to reform, and she turns, and then they fight the general together, or does she not reform? And he like who ends up being the real big bad?
With Picard as a character, he generally errs on the side of mercy whenever possible. They might be like, "Well, let's get her. Now that she's trapped, let's kill her." And he's like, "No, we're not like that. She's gonna go to jail."
Because we could also have the moment where Picard comes up to her, like, before they've defeated her, and, like, tries to convince her to back down and turn against the Empire, because...
I like the idea that inevitably she ends up destroying herself instead of actually getting killed by the good guys, because she's basically the source of her own destruction, or she almost dies. I don't know if we want to kill her or not.
Because it could be the thing where, like, she's like, it's too late for me, but goes out trying to do something good, like... she flies into the enemy super weapon and blows it up or whatever to keep the Earth from being destroyed, and sacrifices her life, like the guy at the end of Independence Day, or whatever.
See, I kind of like that, because we've already set up that like the most dangerous element of the Empire is Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And this sort of like bloodthirsty...
Just him personally.
Yeah, this like bloodthirsty army that he's leading, to the extent that like even Katra is scared of them. The Union and Picard and Martin have like gotten this decisive victory over Katra. She's totally beaten, but she's like, you don't understand. Like, you haven't saved Earth. The military's just going to keep going through. There's nothing that you can do. And maybe like they go off to try to stop the military in this blatant suicide mission. Seeing them do that kind of inspires her, reminds her of being a space cop in the first place. she's the one who
Yes.
then flies the suicide mission to take out the military before they can destroy Earth.
Yes. And then she dies a hero.
Yeah,
I
she
love
dies a hero.
that.
Yeah.
Gets that moment of redemption.
Nicolas Cage's last expression is one of like utter horror and betrayal.
Yeah.
I really want in the credits it to say Nicolas Cage as himself.
Yes. Yeah, he's going to be evil General Cage, like
Yeah.
the Grand Warlord Cage.
Yeah,
And-
that's right.
It's Nicolas Cage, but spelled in a space way.
That's
Yeah.
right.
All right. So the last step of the movie is the closing image. So the movie opened with an image of we got to see everybody and where they were and what their normal day-to-day situation is. What is, now that the story is over, what is the normal day-to-day situation of all of the main characters? And yeah, what are they doing with themselves?
I really want him to be working at Barbecue-niverse still, but now it's a good place, and now he's happy there, and it's nice.
Like maybe he's the manager now. Maybe he owns Barbecue-niverse because now
Definitely
he's a leader.
Picard should be. I don't know if we want Martin there as well, but I don't know. Do we want both of them there or just Picard? What do you think?
But what about his cat?
That's true.
Oh.
He can bring his cat to space.
He could bring his cat to space.
He had him set on an automatic feeder. He was fine.
Like we could say that we could see that he like stayed in space at the Barbecue-niverse and now, but he's like everything's better. You know, as we're sort of panning out, like the cat jumps up on the counter and he's like, "Oh, Cosmo, put it." And so it's like, "Oh, he brought his cat back."
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
And he brought his cat to work. He's relaxed now.
I picture during the like ending narration, he's like, "Yeah, I'm saving the universe still as a space crusader, but I still need to have a part-time job in order to make ends meet." So I work here, you know. And since I know the boss, since his dad, he's like, I got him to lighten some of the restrictions about bringing pets to work.
And they unionized.
And they unionized.
Yeah, and so they all have health care, and it's great.
Yes.
We made the best anti-dystopia. It's not even a utopia. It's just giving the finger to dystopias.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
Now that we've mostly finished this thing, are there any scenes either at the end of the movie or earlier in the movie, now that we know where we're ending, that we want to retroactively insert to like either set things up that are going to get paid off later on, or just like, you know, I wish there could be a scene of this at this stage of the movie. Anything like that?
Do we want to clarify what happened to Christmas Future?
Yeah. What
yeah.
happened? What was the whole deal with him? Because was his spirit purged from the ring? Was it just that he was taken away when the ring got taken away, but he comes back at the end? Like, does he move on to the next life in some way? I don't know. What are we like? Yeah.
Maybe the reason that the ring was able to find its way to Martin in the first place was because of Christmas Future. And so when Catra beats Martin, she's like, okay, now to make sure that this ring doesn't come back to you or to Picard, I'm gonna like destroy the ghost that's inside of it, that like acts as its will. So the ring is still powerful, it just no longer has Space David Bowie inside of it.
I wonder if it's a sort of thing where if he's in like sort of a spectral or ethereal realm and he has like a connection through the ring, and what she does is she severs the connection between that. So it's like a vector point through which he uses to like communicate, and he just loses communication, perhaps.
So do we get to hear from Space David Bowie at the end, or is he just gone? Is it like, because if he represents like the rules in the old ways, then it's about like, yeah, you have to learn your own path. There is no rule book with the thing anymore. You can't just follow the rules of the fast food place. You have to decide for yourself whether or not it's right to leave the register and bring the hamburger to the lady, you know, so like.
Maybe like the last shot is Space David Bowie, Ghost of Christmas Future, watching from the spectral realm. And he just sort of like smiles as he watches, as his descendants have like found this new path for themselves in life.
We have an ending like the end of Return of the Jedi, where it's Space Ghost David Bowie and Space Ghost Catra standing next to each other.
Yes.
Perfect.
This is such an 80s movie.
And then Space Ghost Nicolas Cage shows up. They're like, get out of here. We don't like you.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that we have to do is come up with a title. Do we want to call it Space Crusader, or is there going to be anything else that can approach that?
I mean, it's a real good title.
It is.
It is.
It is.
I just want everything to be about Barbecue-niverse now because it makes me
Adventures
so
in
happy.
Barbecue-niverse.
But I can't think of a way to make that a functioning title for the whole film.
Yeah, no, I think Space Crusader is the way to go.
What's the name of that Bowie song that I'm thinking of that has that in it? I think it's Moon Age Daydream. Hold on a sec. Oh, it's Space Invader is what he says. That's why.
Space
Yeah.
Invader, yeah.
So it's I'm an alligator. I'm a mama papa coming for you. I'm a space invader. I'm a rock and roll bitch for you. Okay, that's
Well,
nice.
so what we do is, because David Bowie is attached to this movie, he re-records a version of it where he says Space Crusader instead of
Sounds
Space
good.
Invader. So then we can tie it
Right.
into the movie, and then that's our title track.
Well, I'm very glad that I misremembered the lyrics of this David Bowie song as Space Crusader instead of Space Invader, because it gave us a much better title for our movie.
Yeah, it sure did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other thoughts on this before we wrap up this movie? How you guys feel about the movie? How did it go?
It sounds great.
I'd own it on DVD. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, VHS. But
Yeah.
like,
Yes,
yeah,
come
I
on.
would.
Betamax.
We needed to have had this in the 80s and then more of this forever after that.
Mags, thank you so much for coming on.
Dang,
This was our first time having a guest on for this particular format of the show. And you were amazing. Like, you did such a good
Yeah.
job. You immediately took to what we were doing, and your ideas are amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This is actually really fun.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem.
Time for the kid thanks. Look,
Hey, it's good.
I was here all along. Over to Twitter. Thank you to Viola Sanderlin, Jeff Rick Present, IntoxPod, Earth Mofo, Ascribed, Decade Fan, Florian, Icon Jade, Sean Boyd, Cosplay Devotee, 3 Owls in a Trench Coat, and Decade Fan. Decade Fan again! You sneaky. Over to Tumbles. Thank you to Ink the Cryptid, Not Very Bright Raven, Secretly a Skeleton and Sid Rabbit Blog. And on Facebook, thank you to Adam Mayo, Robert Ramsey, and Jeff Polier.
Yeah, and thanks once again to Mags. Mags, would you like to tell the kind people listening all about your show, which they should definitely watch because it is excellent?
Oh, God. So, like, I don't know what I do on the internet. I talk about media a lot. As was mentioned earlier, I did a whole thing about, like, vampires and sexuality in pop culture called Vampires Don't Fart. And doing a lot of stuff about, like, media theory right now and coming up and just culture stuff. But I also have a vlog channel or a vlog thing called Tea with Mags where I just like talk about things that interest me and or are relevant to, I don't know, I'm just like having conversations with people. I'm also writing like a sci-fi fantasy novel over on a different thing. You can access that through my Patreon. I have a Patreon, by the way. I'm supposed to plug my Patreon. Yeah, that helps me.
Magdalen Rose on Patreon. Cool. A video on her YouTube channel that you're going to want to check out if you liked this episode is definitely her rules for good space fantasy. It's a really, really good one where you run down what makes space fantasy great and how to do it well. So yeah, it's a great video. So people should check that out.
Oh, geez, thanks.
Can I ask what's the name of your book?
The working title right now is Vaporwave's Time Adventure.
Oh,
Wow.
that's such a good title.
I will say, I love all of your stuff about Vaporwave too. Megs has a really great video about how she's been buying Vaporwave,
right.
which is a really weird genre of music, buying Vaporwave cassettes for herself while on Ambien and not remembering it.
It's not even a joke. Like, it's not. I've had people be like, that's like a great bit. And I'm like, I so wish it were a bit. I so
know.
wish that.
This episode brought to you by Vaporwave and Ambien.
That's right.
Yeah.
You'll only remember one of them.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of Collaboratory. Next week, we're doing our 39th episode of our ongoing actual play RPG, Extraordinary League, and the week after that, it's going to be a Smash Fiction match between Captain Marvel and Shazam.
Smash Metafiction is produced by Dan Mulcairn, with logo design by Claire Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com for our theme song, The Builder.
You can find us on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast and search for the Smash Fiction Podcast on Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube.
Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Smash Fiction is made possible thanks to our supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast. Please consider donating as little as $1 each month. It helps us keep the show going. And we have great rewards and extra content for those who help us out.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight.
You know, No, it's never a necklace and it's never a bracelet or an
No, it's
anklet.
the
You want it to be a
one ring
bracelet?
Why
rule
not an
them all.
anklet?
Yeah. A toe ring.
I was about to say toe ring, Max.
Make it one of those. That's fine.
Yeah.
He just gets off a shoe and you're like, this is a weird move.
Yeah.
I'm down with any of these.
All right. Puka shell necklace it is.
It'd be funny if Martin thinks his dad ran off with that weird cat lady, you know?
Yep.
A weird cat lady makes me think of Michelle Pfeiffer in the 80s.
Oh,
Well, there's
I like
our next
that.
casting choice.
that's our next casting choice.
Yeah.
And we are casting
right.
Benedict Cumberbatch as Martin. He will be 4 years old, but we are casting him.